Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my review for Marvel's What If, Episode 3. What if the world lost its mightiest heroes, or whatever exactly it's called? Um, so I will say right off the bat, this was easily the weakest episode of the series so far. But that's not to say it was bad. It was pretty good, and I liked the mystery element of it. But in order to continue talking, I think we will be talking about spoilers. So just in case, I would definitely suggest checking out before continuing, as we will begin with spoilers in three, two, one, now. So the main gist of this episode is that someone is killing the Avengers before, the Avengers can actually really get going. The team has yet to really start or really do anything as the Avengers. It's during that time period in the universe, basically, and it starts with Tony Stark. Natasha is giving Tony like this medicine to help him while he's in the diner with Natasha and Fury, but it's something somehow it ends up killing him. Natasha is blamed for it, and then it just keeps going on throughout the episode with all these different Avengers dying, and it's during this same week of time where it's like all these the few different movies were happening and all these events. We see Thor come down to Earth, try to lift the hammer in New Mexico, but he ends up getting shot by Hawkeye, who did not intentionally release the arrow. Um, so he gets blamed for that. We see Hawkeye die in prison. We see Hulk blown up, like actually blown up from the inside and everything, which I have to kind of question because Hulk has regenerative abilities, and at certain points in the comics, he has regenerated from really horrific deaths like that. So it's like I'm wondering, would that actually kill him for good, or would it just like maybe be temporary? So I kind of have to question that one. But we see like we don't actually see how Black Widow dies, but it's made clear she does, and so on and so forth. And so the big mystery throughout this episode is who is killing these future Avengers, who is killing these people who would be becoming the Avengers at this point, and why, and how, as well. Um, and so we see Loki come down to Earth to get revenge for Thor and gives Fury a short time frame in order to find the killer. Uh, Before she dies, Black Widow does send a message to Fury saying like hope is the key, and he finally realizes who is doing this and why. And this is honestly a really great twist that I did not see coming at all. Apparently, and it kind of tells us what the trigger in this universe for what changed things on how this what if story came to be, because each episode has that trigger moment that diverts the universe into something else. So this one uh, is the death of Hope Van Dyne. Hope is the key. Hope died doing work with S.H.I.E.L.D. And because of this, her father, Hank Pym, became vengeful, enraged and vengeful at S.H.I.E.L.D. And so he decided to get his revenge by taking out the members of the Avengers initiative that Fury was trying to put into place, as well as anyone who would have been used by Fury for the initiative, such as Thor. Um, and because of this, we see Fury confront um, confront Hank by Hope's grave, and they're able to have a fight. Although Fury seems to be winning, and then we find out that it was actually Loki in disguise as Fury the entire time, which it's like, okay. because Fury had agreed to work with Loki to catch the killer, and they did manage to stop him. He was arrested, and Hank was using the way he was able to kill everyone. He was using basically an Ant-Man suit. Obviously his own version of it. I don't think it was the Yellow Jacket suit, but it kind of reminded me of that. So maybe it was. Um, Let me check something. The description here doesn't say specifically. It just says he was using the shrinking technology. Um, it might have been the Yellow Jacket suit. I'm not 100% confident on that, but either way, he was using a suit with the shrinking technology to be able to kill all of them using other technologies as well as going into their bloodstreams and killing them from the inside and stuff. Um, and yeah. Uh, but he is defeated and arrested and everything, but all of the members of the Avengers Initiative are still dead. So Fury realizes that he does still have, well, hope in the future with other possible candidates. We see he finds Steve. He finds Steve Rogers frozen. And so we know that Captain America will still be able to come into play. And then we see that Carol has returned, Captain Marvel. So she's there as well. Um, so yeah, there's at least two, and obviously from what we know, there's very much possibly more. Uh, so it was definitely an interesting premise, the idea of like the main core Avengers being killed like this, and how that would affect things, and just the mystery element of it. It was good, but it was weaker than the first two episodes of this. Um, the Captain Carter storyline and the T'Challa as Star Lord storyline, both of them were just more interesting to me. Both of them also seemed a little more focused. This one was so wide in its focus. It covered all of these different bases with all of these different characters, and it just feels like outside of maybe Fury and very possibly Natasha, you don't really get enough time with any of them to really care, I guess you could say. Like, yeah, of course, we know these characters from the regular movies and all. Um, but at the same time, it's like this is a one-off thing, and you have to be able to find investment in these characters in and of its own merits. You can't just rely on the other material in the MCU to fuel this story because technically they're an alternate version of those characters, which is funny enough. I thought, like, okay, so that kind of works with the fact that some of them don't have the same voice actors as their live action actors. Like, Carol is not voiced by Brie Larson, for example. Natasha is not voiced by ScarJo. Um, but most of them are still the same. Like, there's still Mark Ruffalo, there's still Samuel L. Jackson. But it's like, because it's an alternate universe, you can kind of get away with that too, with not having the same actors voice acting them in this series. So it's just an interesting thought. But because it's an alternate universe as well, you kind of have to get connected to these characters as they are in this universe. And it's like, yeah, in this case, in this scenario, a lot of them are very similar, pretty much the same kind of characters, same personalities and whatnot. But when you have just so much thrown at you, you just can't connect to them, and you don't really have a time to get hooked in before they die. It just doesn't give you enough time. It's too short for this big of a story. That's what I'm saying. If they wanted to do a story like this, it might have actually been better to do a two-parter. Um, A two-parter would have worked a lot better for this, given a lot more time to breathe, and allowed for just more character work to be done to make us more invested in the deaths that were happening. That's just my view on it, though. I can understand if some people can just view it from like, oh, we know these characters from the MCU's live action movies, so it's all right. We can still connect to them enough. But for me, it's just it wasn't enough in that regard because of knowing that it is an alternate universe and everything. Because when you think about it, the first episode, it gave us a lot with Peggy. It made us endeared to Peggy and even Howard, and to a degree, Bucky and Steve as well. It endeared us to those characters because it gave them time to breathe. It gave them time to showcase their personality. Episode 2 did the same thing with T'Challa, with Yondu, with even the bad guy, the Collector. It's like, and of course, Jimon Hanso's character, who has a name, I can just never remember it. I know the character actually does have a name, I don't remember it. But yeah, they all had time to breathe. Even Thanos and Nebula in the episode, they had time to breathe. They had time to establish their character and showcase their personality. The characters in this didn't. Again, except for Fury and I guess maybe um, Natasha. They were the only ones who were basically relevant throughout the entire thing and had time to actually establish their characters. And Fury obviously being the better of even those two. Um, and also, if I had to name like another little small issue, is that pun intended, I guess, it is the twist with Hank Pym, while good and unexpected, also very much came out of nowhere. Like when you look back at it, it's like, oh yeah, of course that could have been him. That makes sense now. All of these deaths definitely can connect to that. But there was no real hints that it was him before. I feel like they should have added at least something in the episode that would have told us, like, oh, it's probably him, or at least given some kind of hint at that possibility. The fact that there was nothing outside of, like, nothing you could figure out and nothing you could even theorize about with it prior to the actual reveal just feels like a little bit like it almost feels like they pulled that reveal out of their ass and then explained how everyone died with it after the fact. Like it feels like it wasn't actually planned that way from the beginning. And that's just what they decided to go to after they wrote everything else already. And that's probably not the case, mind you. That's probably not the case. But that's what it felt like to me. Because it just felt like there was nothing to hint at that until the end when we found out that, yeah, it was him. Again, at the end when we found out, it's like, oh yeah, that all makes sense now. It all works. It all fits together. But again, there was nothing to tell us that that was a possibility. Nothing to even give us that inclination prior to the reveal. The closest thing was when he was fighting Natasha. You didn't see who was fighting Natasha. It looked like it was someone invisible because, of course, he was small. We never saw his identity and everything, so the only thing we ever got to see was her fighting what looked like someone invisible, and it's like at that point that's what you're thinking, that it's someone invisible, so you're trying to think of who could be invisible here. So it's like it kind of leads you in the wrong direction, and it's just I don't know. It's just the first time you ever get a hint at it is when Natasha sends the message to Fury that hope is the key, and it's like that's the only time. But that's basically at the very end, and it's like right before Fury figures it out. So that doesn't. I don't really count that either. I just feel like this episode again. It just had too much going on for its short time period or time limit. It just did not have enough time to allow a story like this to breathe. And because of it felt rushed. It felt really rushed and just incomplete. They needed a lot more time to truly make it work. But again, it's not bad. It was still enjoyable. It was still interesting. And again, the mystery of it still kept me invested. I was definitely focused every second trying to figure out what the hell is going on here. So I by no means um, disliked this episode, but I just did not like it as much as the first two. But that's bound to happen. In an anthology series like this, you're bound to get episodes that just don't work as well for you. Some people might say that about the Captain Carter episode. In fact, IGN did. IGN apparently was let down a little bit by that episode from what they said. Because I saw their like post about the second episode, and it's like after a disappointing first episode, it's like this one gets everything right, and it's like I saw people in the comments like, "How was the first episode disappointing?" And everyone was bitching about that. Like, what the hell were you on if you thought the first episode was disappointing? And it's like that's the person who wrote that's opinion, and that's fine. I mean, I thought the first episode was amazing, but and apparently a lot of other people did too. But like, I guess the person writing for IGN with this series just didn't, and that's their right. They have the right to that opinion. Um, but still, if someone found that episode disappointing, if someone found the second episode disappointing, that's completely fine. It's all subjective. I just found this one a little disappointing, and that's just how it's going to happen. I don't know how many episodes this series is in total, um, but there's definitely so much more they could do. Unlike with other shows like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, this one actually, or WandaVision, I guess, this one warrants a second season. Like those two shows I mentioned, Falcon and Winter Soldier, WandaVision, both of them really wouldn't work to have a second season. A second season of either of them would make no sense and would actually kind of go against the point. Because WandaVision couldn't continue as it was. It would make literally no sense because everything was wrapped up. And Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I mean, you can't have another Falcon and the Winter Soldier because there's no more Falcon. He's Captain America now. But even beyond that, again, everything was wrapped up. Everything that needed to be told with that story is done. You could make another Loki because that story clearly wasn't done. But still, it's just, I feel that we just need to address the fact that this series could use a large episode order. And so multiple seasons are very much possible because, again, it's a multiverse. You could have any number of options. And there's so many, like, there's actual comics based on it, or that this was based on. There's a What If series of comics. So there's a lot of stuff to pull from, even. And of course, you could do plenty with all the different characters in the MCU. I would love to see one for Spider Man. Like, very specifically, one centered around Peter. I think it would be fantastic. Um, I just think there's a lot of possibilities for that kind of stuff. In fact, I just thought of one off the top of my head for Spider Man. What if Michelle Jones, MJ, became Spider Man instead of Peter Parker? There's an idea. There's a concept. Um, that would be an interesting way to go about it, and have MJ have to eventually tell Peter that she's, well, I guess either Spider Girl, Spider Woman. It would be a very interesting concept to touch on stuff like that. There's so many ideas, and I've heard people like on social media even giving forward some ideas they've come up with. There's so much possibility. And so this series could definitely go on for multiple seasons. This series could have a high episode order, so on and so forth. Um, the only real thing they'd have to worry about is paying the voice actors who are returning, and well, the ones who take over and everything. So it's like you still gotta like pay to have it, so high episode orders might not happen, but they could still do multiple seasons. I don't know. We'll see. Because a lot of the bigger name ones aren't back anyway. Like Chris Evans didn't reprise his role as Captain America. Robert Downey Jr. wasn't back as Tony Stark, etc., etc. So um, it's not like everyone's back anyway, but still. Either way, either way. Like I said, I enjoyed this episode still, and I want to hear your thoughts. So tell me in the comments below, what did you think of episode 3 of Marvel's What If? And thank you all so much for tuning in. For now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.